10th, another suicide bomber assassinated Hakim-Taniwal, governor of Paktia province. I had been scheduled to visit him later that week. He was a genteel, bespectacled sociology professor who had fled from Afghanistan to Pakistan in 1980, moved to Australia in 1997, and then returned home to Afghanistan in 2002 to help rebuild his shattered country. Afghan President Hamid Karzai had asked his close friend Taniwal to come to Paktia, a rugged province in the foothills of the Hindu Kush Mountains in eastern Afghanistan, which had become a hotbed of insurgent activity. Australia's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Alexander Downer, who knew Taniwal, described him as a scholarly, soft-spoken man of integrity and a good man with a reputation as a highly capable administrator. Taniwal's family had begged him not to return to Afghanistan, but he felt an overwhelming sense of patriotism and couldn't miss the opportunity to help rebuild his homeland. Ghulam Gul, the suicide bomber, crept up to Taniwal's car and blew himself up as the car pulled away from the governor's office in Gardes. The next day, nearly 1,000 mourners attended Taniwal's funeral, including the Afghan ministers of Interior, Refugees, Communications, and Parliamentary Affairs. The outpouring of grief and the admiration for Taniwal were palpable. But in a shocking display of irreverence, another suicide bomber blew himself up at the funeral, killing at least 7 people and wounding up to 40. 5 of the dead were policemen and 2 were children. The Taliban decision to target a funeral, one of the most solemn occasions in Islam, defied basic human dignity. President Karzai denounced the attack as a heinous act of terrorism against Islam and humanity. Afghanistan, one U.S. soldier remarked to me at the time, was beginning to feel like Iraq in 2003. Kabul, and indeed Afghanistan more broadly, had a strange fin de siècle air. What had happened? Why did an insurgency develop in Afghanistan? Downward spiral. As horrible as they were, the September 11, 2001 attacks provided the United States with an opportunity to eliminate al-Qaeda from Afghanistan, and the United States jumped at the chance, launching within weeks the most significant and expensive counterterrorism effort in the history of the United States. In an emotional address to a joint session of Congress 9 days after the attacks, President George W. Bush pledged to begin a global war against terror. The leadership of al-Qaeda has great influence in Afghanistan and supports the Taliban regime in controlling most of that country. In Afghanistan, we see al-Qaeda's vision for the world. Afghanistan would be the first battleground. Our war on terror begins with al-Qaeda, but it does not end there. It will not end until every terrorist group of global reach has been found, stopped, and defeated. Overall, the United States spent more than $430 billion for military and diplomatic efforts over the first 5 years, and deployed military forces to the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. This amount was larger than the annual gross domestic product of 89% of the world's countries. Afghanistan was where much of the planning and training for the September 11th attacks took place, and, at least initially, it was the central front of America's war on terror, and rightly so. Following his capture, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, head of al-Qaeda's military committee and Osama bin Laden's principal operative for the attacks, boasted, "I was emir, commander, of Beit al-Shuhada, the martyr's house, in the state of Kandahar, Afghanistan, which housed the 9/11 hijackers. There, I was responsible for their training and readiness for the execution of the 9/11 operation." In 2001, U.S. Special Operations and CIA forces, along with Afghan indigenous troops backed by U.S. air power, combined to overthrow the Taliban regime in less than 3 months, while suffering only 12 U.S. fatalities. Some argued that the operation revitalized the American way of war. Indeed, it was a remarkably effective campaign. Approximately 100 CIA officers, 350 Special Forces soldiers, and 15,000 Afghans, running as many as 100 combat sorties per day, defeated a Taliban army estimated at 50,000 to 60,000, plus several thousand al-Qaeda fighters. Despite